And today we're gonna expose why belly fat accumulates in the first place and what you can actually do about it. I keep hearing from people who say they're doing everything right with their nutrition, they're training consistently, but they're still carrying stubborn fat around their midsection. They're frustrated because the conventional path doesn't seem to work. Even if they've dropped some body fat, there's still that extra little bulge in the midsection. And then when I ask what they've tried, it's always the same things. I've tried going even harder on the diet. Maybe I've added some cardio. Maybe I've added some resistance training in the ab area, including loaded ab work, which I highly recommend, but it doesn't necessarily address the root cause. I wanted to walk you through 7 root causes of belly fat accumulation just to get a better understanding of where this all comes from and why it tends to change and increase with age and with menopause and with all of these other factors. We're going to talk about things like stress and sleep and hormones, of course, but we also are going to understand the physiological mechanisms and then how do we counteract them. Root cause number 1 is chronic stress and elevated cortisol. Let's start with this because this is I don't know if it's still overlooked, but most under-addressed factor in belly fat that people maybe want to put their head in the sand about or not sure exactly how to address it, or they kind of throw up their hands and say, well, my life is busy, it's crazy, I'm a parent, I'm a exec, whatever, nothing I can do about it. And that's not true. When you're chronically stressed, whether it is from work, relationships, finances, or even, yes, under eating and overtraining, your body releases cortisol. As I said many times recently, it's not a bad thing. It's part of the cascade of hormones in your body. It's a signaling messenger. It is your stress hormone. And in the short term, it is actually protective. We need to have stress sometimes to protect ourselves. It mobilizes energy. It helps you deal with threats, right? The fight or flight. But when it stays elevated, you're just back to back to back, keeping that sucker pumped up for weeks or months. It tells your body to store fat centrally. And this is actually part of its protective mechanism taken to an extreme. So where does this store it? Around your abdomen. This is an evolutionary response. Your body thinks resources are scarce or you're under threat, so it protects the vital organs by padding them with readily available energy. Root cause number 2, it's sleep, poor sleep quality, and sleep restriction. And this again is the other big underestimated lever for losing body fat. When you don't get enough sleep or when your sleep quality is poor, you've got those hunger hormones that get ramped up or disrupted, I should say. Ghrelin, the thing that signals hunger, goes up. Leptin signals fullness goes down, right? I've said this many times. Plus there's other hormones like GLP-1 that get affected. And so you're hungrier throughout the day. You're less satisfied when you do eat. You're like, okay, what does that have to do with belly fat? Well, sleep deprivation raises insulin resistance. Your cells become less responsive to insulin, so your body secretes more to compensate. And guess what? Chronically elevated insulin, in addition to cortisol, is one of the primary drivers of belly fat storage. Root cause number 3, hormonal changes, especially estrogen, testosterone, and thyroid. Let's start with estrogen. When estrogen drops during menopause, the fat distribution shifts. I don't have to tell women this, you know this, okay? You've heard about it or you've experienced it. Premenopausal women tend to store fat in their hips and thighs, whereas later in premenopause into menopause, postmenopausal women store it more in their abdomen. You see a change in the anoid-gynoid ratio. You see a change into that different body shape. And this isn't necessarily about gaining more fat overall. That's what's important. It's about where the fat goes on your body. I've had plenty of clients I've worked with, women in their 40s, for example, 40s and 50s, where we dial in all the things and they start to drop body fat and they start to get more muscular and lean and looking great. And yet they still have the belly fat. It almost becomes a little bit more pronounced because now you see that that's the last trouble spot, if you will. Or I'll get people coming to me saying, look, I just have 10 pounds left and it's all in my belly. Similarly, for men, low testosterone definitely leads to increased abdominal fat and decreased lean mass. Now, there's a chicken and egg here because if you're carrying extra body fat in general, it can also drop your testosterone, and that's a vicious cycle. But testosterone will naturally drop as well. And then thyroid dysfunction, whether that's hypo or hyperthyroidism, directly affects your metabolism and the pattern that your body stores fat in. Root cause number 4 is insulin resistance and hyperinsulinemia. So insulin. What is this? Insulin is your storage hormone. Again, when I talk hormones, there's no good or bad. There's how they are expressed based on your behaviors, your lifestyle, your genetics, etc. So insulin is your storage hormone when you eat. So when you eat, especially carbs, your pancreas releases insulin to shuttle the glucose into your cells. for energy or for storage. And I say it that way because you can immediately use it as energy or you can store it as fat. When insulin is chronically elevated, either because you're eating constantly throughout the day, right? And maybe you're in a surplus, or because your cells have become resistant to insulin signal. I'm going to say these are two different things. There's reasons insulin can increase that are okay, that are fine, right? And your blood sugar, for example, as measured by blood sugar. And I talked all about this with Ben Zeal, who has type 1 diabetes, where he basically said, look, if you're lifting weights, if you're walking and you're healthy and you don't have type 1 diabetes, you don't even have to worry about your blood sugar. So you can have insulin resistance even when your fasting glucose looks normal. I want to kind of disconnect some of these concepts, and this is where it gets complicated with blood work. Your body is just secreting more insulin to keep the glucose in check, right? And this is called hyperinsulinemia, and it's actually a precursor to type 2 diabetes, so it's part of prediabetes. Root cause number 5 is a sedentary lifestyle and low NEAT. Now, you might think I've kind of already covered this, but we just talked about insulin specifically and what you can do about it. Now I'm talking about the direct impact beyond that of a sedentary lifestyle and not enough movement. Okay, and this isn't about exercise and running and cardio and working out or even training, right? You can train 6 days a week and still be too sedentary. I see it all the time. Guys who, or ladies who have a desk job and they have their training sessions and they're consistent, but then they get 3,000 steps a day. And it might sound crazy, but many of you probably can relate to that. You might say, well, isn't it about energy balance? It is, but it's also about which energy systems your body is deciding to use and how your body's deciding to store the excess fat. And when you sit for too long, you're biasing it in the wrong direction toward visceral belly fat. Root cause number 6 is aging and sarcopenia. Now, I mentioned I wouldn't discuss genetics, and I also am not talking about just aging in and of itself. I'm talking about what comes with aging when you're not intervening. Which you know where I'm going with this. Muscle loss that comes with aging is massive. Starting around age 30, you lose about 3 to 5% of your muscle mass per decade. For women, I shouldn't say for women, men and women, it could be up to 8%. Let's just put it that way. But it doesn't matter. You're losing a ton of muscle mass no matter what, okay? And less muscle mass means a slower metabolism, less glucose disposal, lower calorie burn, more fat storage. And so as you age, that alone is going to cause you to preferentially store fat in your midsection. Root cause number 7, it's alcohol. Alcohol has several very important mechanisms that promote belly fat. More than one drink a day starts to have serious negative health consequences over time and has a much higher correlation with all-cause mortality. We used to think 2 is fine a day. Now we know it's barely 1, if that. If you're, smaller, petite female, whatever, maybe a half a drink a day starts to be not a great thing. And that's over the long term, but even in the short term, alcohol definitely affects belly fat. Your body is going to prioritize metabolizing the alcohol over everything else when you drink it. And so when you drink it, your fat oxidation temporarily is suspended, right? So the calories from alcohol get used instead and nothing else gets used. So I don't want to fearmonger here and say that it's going to cause you to store even more body fat. It's still energy, it's still calories, but your body has to burn those alcohol calories first because it's a poison, it's a toxin, and it needs to clear those out through your liver, right? Our natural detox system. A real health thing I want to cover before we conclude about belly fat. It's not just cosmetic, right? Visceral fat around your organs is metabolically active, and so it's inflammatory. It secretes inflammatory compounds. It disrupts your hormone signaling. It increases your risk of metabolic disease. It's a vicious cycle because the other things you're doing do those as well, but oftentimes they're happening because they're increasing the belly fat. So when you can address the 7 root causes, belly fat is often one of the first things that ends going. I'm talking about the visceral fat, not necessarily subcutaneous fat. Because it's the most metabolically active, it actually responds fastest when you improve your sleep or your stress management or your training. So it might feel like belly fat is stubborn, but it could be more responsive than you think, and you might make faster progress than you think, but you've got to do it. You've got to take the action today. So those are the 7 root causes of belly fat, and you might be doing all these things and you might still not be seeing the results. So go to winstonweights.com/bloodwork if you want that performance blood work analysis. It's a one-off thing where I put together a plan for you. Until next time, keep using your wits, lifting those weights, and remember that the strongest version of you is waiting on the other side. I'll talk to you next time.